Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a special mate on, Nic. I'll introduce you to Nic in a minute. But first, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians, the land that I'm calling in from. I'm here in Baldwin Q on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to any other Aboriginal people who have joined us today, including my wonderful guest, Nic. Nic, how are you?
Good. How are you, AJ?
I'm fine. It's great to see you.
You too.
So for people that don't know you, who are you? Where you're from? Who's your mob?
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm from the Anaiwan people. They're up in the Glen Innes area. But I was born on Biripi country and grew up on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. I was there right up until my late teens, early 20s, and then moved down onto Wurundjeri country for the last 7, 8 years.
So for people that don't know the Aboriginal names, where you just said that you come from?
Yep. So born in Tari, grew up in Canberra and Bungendore in that sort of rural New South Wales outside of Canberra and moved into Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back a little bit in time to school. How much Aboriginal studies did you learn at school?
It's really interesting you ask. So I did school up till year three. I kindergarten, primary school, years one and years two. I don't remember much about that other than I was bullied immensely. And it got to the point where my parents, with three younger siblings at the time, went, "No, this is it," and dragged us out of school and homeschooled. Um,
Ah,
yeah, so mum got registered with the Department of Education in Canberra, wrote a curriculum aligned with the ACT curriculum, and became a poster child of the ACT Department of Education on what home education is. And then when we moved out to Bungendore, same thing there. So my experience of Aboriginal education was through community directly through community organisations, dragging us out everywhere. Yeah,
so did you complete year 12?
I did. So I did my year 10 through TAFE, they call it now distance education,
Yeah.
and then year 11 and 12 through that, where I sat my HSC um, exams at Canberra High with the rest of the students there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, what sort of experience was it like, not being in a classroom, but just being at home doing study?
And it was interesting. It's a very different experience. We set up such a great routine across there. It wasn't like what people stereotypically think of homeschooling as, is just have in that whole unschooling capacity. We had textbooks like everybody else. We had to do paperwork to gather the evidence to show the education department that we're progressing at different at levels. But there was a lot more going out excursions. There was also focus on life skills and us up. My mum was targeting, because both dad and mum left school early. I think they both maybe finished year 10. Um, they wanted to make sure all us kids by the age of 15, 16, we could run a household by ourselves. Budget, cook, clean, everything. And so there was that real cool combined areas of that. And then as I was in my teenage years, I was given access to the Urana Centre at the Canberra Institute of Technology, the Jarbel Centre at ANU,
I studied there.
Ngunnawal Centre.
I studied there too.
And so, as kids and teenagers, while my parents were studying and doing their careers, we were able to be part of the community through that way. So there is some incredible academics at the moment that I've known since I was 14. And so I'm working with them now, and it's really awesome.
Yeah. So what's your job now? Tell people
Yeah,
what you actually do.
I've got two jobs. I'll do my professional one, Oh, they're both professional. So at the moment, I'm working at the RMIT in the College of Vocational Education as a manager, Indigenous Learning and Teaching, where I support our College of Vocational Education is our TAFE side, and so I support 700 to 800 non-Indigenous teachers to embed Indigenous perspectives, knowledges, and teaching practices. I do that by connecting with community, providing some generic advice, and working with them to find who the right people they need to see, how to do research, professional development, everything that surrounds that and builds their capability to be able to embed Indigenous knowledges safely, properly, and alongside community.
Yeah. So that's one job.
That's one job. The other one is
it sounds huge to start off with.
it's massive. But yeah, I started Deadly Sports Plus Aboriginal Corporation as a ACO charity early last year, and this is the only Aboriginal-led first aid organization in Australia, and the only queer-led charity in Australia in the first aid sector. So the idea was on my weekends, I used to work and volunteer in first aid, in sports and community events, and realized there are no Aboriginal, there's no trans or gender diverse or sexual diverse supported spaces for people with neurodiversity like myself or people with physical disabilities. There was no safe space for people to work in this space. You always had to hide yourself. So I wanted to create a space where we could work community for community. And it is just slowly growing and growing as we build.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that too, because you're right. There hasn't been a space for people that don't fit a certain mold.
No.
And I'm glad that you're creating those spaces. Yeah. So after you left school, what did you study? What was your degree in? What did you study?
So after I finished high school, I got a pretty shocking ATAR in the 40s or 50s, something that I'm not proud of, but I completed year 12. But because where I was living and because of the bonus schemes that us mob get access to in the previous UAI system, now the ATAR system, I was able to get into a Bachelor of Environmental Science at University of Canberra.
Yeah.
So I started studying that for 6 months for a semester, and I had a wonderful tutor who went, "Hey, you're doing too good here. You're not getting challenged enough. I want to see you at ANU. They've got a similar program, but I think it's more your style." And so I reapplied at ANU, and since I scored 4 HDs at University of Canberra, it bumped my ATAR up, so my official ATAR is 99.8 because you can just add your previous study to it. And so I ended up at ANU for a few years, but with undiagnosed ASD and ADHD, I crashed and burnt and jumped into federal government work for a few years and just took a break from study.
Yeah. Yeah. So what made you move to Melbourne?
It was just a weird coincidence. I was working in a federal government agency. I had a traumatic experience in the family, which I needed to move for my safety. And at the same time, my boss's boss had a project happening down here in Melbourne and decided, hey, Nic's got the qualifications, Nic's got some experience, and they need out of here. And so I was offered a 3-year secondment down here to work on some work here, and that was in late 2017.
Okay. And just before COVID hit.
Yeah. And then when COVID hit, I was job jumping within the agency wherever they would put me to keep me in Melbourne. And I was doing some sort of support for COVID PPE and that sort of thing within the agency, making sure everybody is safe.
I've got a question for you because it comes up quite a lot, but in terms of the concept of cultural safety, what makes you feel culturally safe and how do you define cultural safety?
Oh, that's a really good one. Um, I guess for me, cultural safety is an area where I can exist fully with no shame. I can practice culture with no shame. And when we talk about practicing culture, we're not talking about clapsticks, lap laps, that sort of thing. It's more about how you and I are talking, AJ. I don't usually talk like this in a work environment, and because I'm not in that amazingly safe space. And I think it's a place where there is a reduced level of judgment. It's that no shame, and you don't have to hide aspects. I was at a conference, the Indigenous Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference today, run by Vacho in Headspace, and there was a talk with um, Nat from Varcho and Dan from Rainbow Health Australia, where they talked about Rainbow Mob and how Rainbow Mob indigeneity and their queer identity are intrinsically linked. You can't have one without the other for Rainbow Mob, and I when you ask that, that's what I'm reflecting on now, is that it is that sense of no shame, that you can bring your whole self without feeling like you are judged for your existence.
Yeah. And I think, people sometimes think cultural safety is just around like our Aboriginal culture. But when you introduce yourself and you display the intersectionalities that make up Nic, there's times where you need to feel or may feel culturally unsafe in certain aspects of Nic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like without bringing up the trauma from the end of August, I was having a conversation with somebody that, as a trans person, I'm still very mask presenting, but I wear a skirt everywhere because skirts are so much more comfortable than pants, and I love that visual thing of here is somebody who is gender non-conforming, but I was discussing is I wear mob shirts all the time. And it was the first time in a while where I'm like, I'd rather walk around in a dress, heels, a shitty wig through Melbourne than I would be comfortable working around with the flag on me or a mob t-shirt. Um, and there's that intersectionality there, that for the first time there was that separation of indigeneity as well from that, and I think it's there is really a need to consider all aspects. And as somebody who hits all your diversity hire targets, Aboriginal, trans, gender diverse, sexual diverse, and hidden disabilities, that those all make up who I am. And to make a safe space for me, all those things need to be supported, because culture is that culture of the embodiment.
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite photos of you is, I think, on the Deadly Sport on your Deadly Sports Plus profile in that pink outfit.
Oh, yeah, the pink dress.
That pink dress and
Yeah.
those orange earrings.
Yeah, I went to, that was a photo done at one of my friends' weddings. My partner and I got dressed up and that sort of thing, and the photographer just focused on me the entire time. There was so many photos of me. And I think it's honestly, it's the one of the prettiest photos I've have of me. Um, and I think it is a real striking identity photo too, because I'm not shying away from very masc presenting because that's just what genetics have given me. But at the same time, I can look pretty in pink with big earrings and gorgeous eyeshadow, and that doesn't change who I am as a person.
No, no. Question: do you think LGBTIQ plus issues and Aboriginality are oh, stop. I'll just cut that question. I'll fix it. I'll fix the question up. What I was just going to ask, do you think, oh, sorry again, 5, 4, 3, 2. Do you think that we know that people still struggle with Aboriginal issues, and we know that people still struggle sometimes with LGBTIQ plus issues? Being a person that identifies in both those sectionalities, how do people try to work you out or work out, because I think some people would go, look, I really want to make sure that I am culturally safe, but how do they do that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And again, about the conference today, I found out roughly 1 in 5 Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people fall under the LGBTI spectrum, and which is so much higher than the rest of the population as well. I think people are really supportive a lot of the time. You are going to have people who are uneducated or who are educated and uncomfortable, who are not going to be able to tolerate my existence. And that's okay. I think the big issue, the big thing that people try to do is we try to be empathetic and try and step into somebody else's shoes and try to imagine to exist as that person. And so working in what I do is cultural education here at RMIT, is that people try and imagine themselves being an Aboriginal person for a day and remove their white privilege from that and trying to imagine themselves there. Which is difficult when you have no life experience and you don't have that background. And the same thing as people try and imagine being a trans person. And they go, how would I feel wanting to wear a skirt? Or how would I feel as a man that I want to change as a woman? And those aren't experiences that their mind is able to comprehend. And I think that area is a not a mistake, but it's a well-intentioned misstep. The approaches that I teach and I try and support is more about reflecting your self-reflection and see how you sit in a community as a non-Indigenous person, or in a community as a straight person, or a cis person, and reflect on your uncomfortableness and your thoughts and feelings, because at the end of the day, we are different people, and you can't control what I think of you. I can't control what you think of me, but we have to find a balance somewhere, and self-reflection is that approach rather than trying to imagine what existence is like for me.
And I like how you just said there about their uncomfortableness, because it is uh, an ally's responsibility sometimes to acknowledge the uncomfortableness. And people don't know what they don't know, but to be a true ally is to admit first that you don't know.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to be a true ally and said to you, where would I start that journey? What would you tell them?
Yeah, for me, it's all about that critical self-reflection, looking back at your privilege, and privilege is not a nasty word or a bad word, it's just an existence. I'm very privileged in this space, in an Aboriginal space, as a pale person, and I can chameleon, and I can use the privilege of that to protect my Aboriginal identity if I need to. Or I can put on pants, I can grow my beard back out, and I can deepen my voice and just do that and protect um, that sort of thing. So that's a privilege. But yeah, it's that, yeah, critical self-reflection, thinking, looking back at yourself, your interactions, your thoughts and your feelings about that, and sitting in your uncomfortableness. What is it called? Courageous Conversations has this beautiful framework that they have about where how you sit back and think and put yourself on your thoughts compass about your automatic reaction. And I think and as I work in this space more and more, I think it is about dealing with your own perceptions in that space. Everybody just wants to exist. Everybody wants to be themselves and their authentic selves. And if that is making you uncomfortable, that is a you problem that you need to fix. It's not a me problem that my existence makes you uncomfortable. And I will do everything in my power to support you to be able to feel comfortable with my existence, but that I can't do that without your buy-in.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you've and it's trying to make it clear that you're not the problem, you're not the issue. The issue's with everybody else, because they're they're looking back going, you don't fit in, you're not normal. And the reality is that this is me. What's your problem with that?
Yeah. Yeah, and like that's the thing is like I've always been the kid who pushes boundaries. I am always the person who wants to push to the edge of things and challenge people's thoughts and feelings and behaviors, because I don't think you can change as a society and grow as a society unless your assumptions are dealt with. I think in a room, in a meeting, if everybody agrees on a decision without any argument, without any discussion, I shouldn't say argument, but any discussion, any pulling apart of it, I will be the one who throws a spanner in the works, not because I don't agree, but because we have missed something. And I think the more we challenge, the better.
Does anyone ever mistake your challenging as threatening or assertiveness, that assertiveness, aggressiveness kind of thing? Because I can see you, I know you well, I can see the passion, I can see where it's all coming from, but does it ever get misinterpreted?
Oh yeah, definitely. In my previous role at University of Melbourne, I was working in a space where we ran camps for young Indigenous people, and we would go out to schools and doing some Indigenous education things. And kept raising my voice, going, we can't call this Indigenous-led programs because I'm not in charge of the budget. I'm not in charge of the content. I am just the facilitator arranging students. And we can't call it Indigenous run because you keep giving me non-Indigenous students to run this stuff. So I can't do that. And it got to a point where I had to leave because I had a few my supervisor and their supervisor pulled me up and told me to settle down, back off, this is not your place to raise. And it got me into such an unsafe environment. I just had to get out. And that's how I ended up at RMIT, actually, is that I was trying to get out with any just sort of job. And there's like, oh, there's one job here, but you have to have your Cert 4 in TAE. And I'm like, I've got that. And they're like, oh, and you have to have some sort of post-grad experience in Indigenous education. I'm like, I've got my grad cert in education, Indigenous education. And they're like, oh, okay.
And at the moment, you're also studying masters at University of Wollongong.
That's correct. So I decided I had been eyeing off the grad cert in the Indigenous trauma and recovery practice after I saw that you did it, AJ, and a few other academics that I admire did it across different areas. And yeah, I thought it was really cool to see like anthropologists, and health workers and like just community members do this grad set. I'm like, yeah, may as well. That sounds fun. And then after chatting, emailing back and forth with Liz Dale, and talking to my partner, I'm like, it's only a few extra units. I may as well just do the masters. That'll be fun. And so I'm doing my masters.
Yeah. How long you got left to do that?
So I'm hoping to be finished end of next year. I'm targeting to do a major project next year, somewhere in the first aid area, I hope. And then just one unit that I just couldn't do this semester because that would overload me. But yeah, it's really fascinating as I'm doing this. There's no research on first aid, cultural safety, or just generally first aid in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in Australia. There are some in Canada, um, some in America, but there's no research in first aid training or first aid practices um, in Australia for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's I'm so surprised.
That that sounds like a very interesting topic.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're right, I don't think I've never seen in any literature review that I've ever done around first aid and Aboriginal cultural safety.
No, no. So in the first aid unit's competency, there is one line in your guidelines which is consider cultural, have some cultural considerations, and that's it. It's not until you hit,
What does that mean? Like,
yeah, and then you don't, and not until you hit your diploma is then you have your CHC Div 002
yeah,
promote Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander cultural safety unit. And so there is patient transport officers who are doing Cert 4s or less, and then all the first aid training, there is no cultural considerations at all in training, like in training content or even delivery. So I think that's where I want to focus on because I think it's important to create a culturally safe space in that area.
yeah, and it would fit really well into that course that you're doing around trauma informed practice.
Yeah.
Because obviously people are in a trauma in a first aid situation. We do need to look at the cultural aspects, but yeah, what are the cultural aspects if they've never been explained? Or
Yeah, exactly. And like as Daily Sports Plus, as first responders, not that we've done formal training. I haven't worked with my team for formal training with the social and emotional wellbeing framework, but we have informal conversations about it is that when we're working with community, somebody, let's say, whether the senior football or netball carnival, um, old mates injured themselves, broken their wrist. Let's go that. Um, but if they've got community around, they've got family around, they're culturally safe in that space because it's a community event, and they're feeling very connected to elders, ancestors. That's 4 out of the 7 areas. We tend to find that that patient is super good to handle their pain and super in a good mental state to make a decision about how they can deal things. Whereas we're at an event where it's not culturally safe, they don't have family around, they don't have that sort of thing, and we're having more areas of the 7 sectors of social emotional well-being not being supported, that injury tends to be more life-changing or more not life-changing but more traumatic for them. And so creating understanding that space and understanding the other supports that we can provide that person in that state to help that that injury, because that injury is not what they're worried about. When somebody breaks a bone, they're not worried about the bone. They are worried about work, family, community commitments.
Yeah. But what makes a good role model?
Um,
Without naming them, what
yeah,
what makes them a good role model?
honestly, it's the for me, it's those people. For me, it's those people who are leading the way, making change, and showing their authentic selves in an area. Um, I've been watching a few academics who fall into the gender non-conforming space, um, standing up and working on building the acceptance in university sector about how universities can be more inclusive to us, gender diverse, rainbow mob. I get to work almost daily with an elder in community where I can watch how he works and finds balance in his community obligations and his community outcomes, but still be this incredible professional in this in at RMIT, and finding that balance as being respected as a employee and not being respected as an employee because he's an elder. It's because he's an employee who has incredible outcomes, and that's the sort of stuff that I love
Yeah.
and look up to. I would love to like when I grow up, I want to be him, honestly.
When you
If I
grow up.
grow up.
When you grow
If
up.
I grow up.
Yeah. I'm hitting 54 and I'm not sure I know what I want to be yet when I grow up. Just a couple of final questions, and one is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
I have no idea. I didn't know where I would be
I,
when I hit 30, if I was going to hit 30. And so I'm just following what life gives me. From when I left federal government to do some work with the Australian Indigenous Leadership Centre, I from that point onwards, I've just been following what pops up, what arrives, and can where my heart takes me. At the moment, for some reason, I've fallen into the social and emotional well-being space. So I assume that Deadly Sports Plus will end up down further in that space, or I will find more spaces there. But I'm happy just to follow where life leads me at the moment.
my final question is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, I think for me is that rainbow mob like me exist, and we're not here to cause chaos or make people uncomfortable. I think it's important, if that does make you uncomfortable, is that work on that cultural safety piece, work on that critical self-reflection, and yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, I want to say thank you very much for joining me. I know how busy you are, and I know our listeners will be really grateful in what you've been able to contribute to society, but also what you've been able to do personally and professionally. And you know how much I really do love and respect the work that you do too.
Thank you, AJ. I appreciate it.
So I want to say thank you to Nic, and guys, I'll see you at the next podcast. Bye.